Hello, so today I thought I'd just show you this book I found. It is a, singer sewing book. It says quite obviously there. And this is like a sewing guide that you would have got to help you how to learn basic sewing techniques when knowing how to sew was more of a thing that was expected of people, especially women. So this particular copy, I believe, is from 1954. And this would have just been given to women, it would have been women, it was the 50s, to know how to sew things. People were buying things. This was a time of getting things off the rack, and department stores did exist, but there was still an expectation that you would sew some things or mend things or have some sort of proficiency in sewing, at least far more than we have today. So I thought it'd just be really interesting to go through it. So obviously this is a Singer branded one. So the book is going to specifically recommend you use their sewing machines and all of that. But honestly, you really wouldn't need to. But because Singer are probably one of the most well-known brands, and I think commercially they've probably done the best, especially in the Victorian era when sewing machines were starting to become a thing. Anyway, I'm just rambling out. Let's open the book. Oh wait a minute. So this is the book cover, but the actual book looks like this. It's not as aesthetic, I suppose, in terms of having, because this looks very 50s, especially with the fashion. But I do like the old book kind of look to it, and the little stitch lines and the little gold foil. It might not be gold foil, but the golden thing there. But anyway. So this seems to actually have been a present, maybe. It belonged to this person. So this book belongs to Mrs. P.A. Nelson. Is that R? Is that an R? Beaconfield Junior Junction Drive. I'm obviously not very good at deciphering fonts, am I? Harlexton Street, Woodborough Road, Nottingham, and it was in Christmas 1954. So this appears to be a Christmas present for someone in 1954. And I really love seeing little bits of text like this and knowing a little bit about the previous owner. And judging by the fact it's Mrs., I'm assuming it may have been a newly married woman, maybe someone who recently had children, I'm not sure, but she probably would have been expected to do housewife things and sewing. She was probably middle class, or maybe even a bit higher up the social ladder, because maybe she had time to stay at home and could actually live that 50s idea of being the housewife, because although that was the ideal, if you were especially working class, it wasn't uncommon for the women in the family to also be working. But anyway, I do love seeing flourishes of things like this, and I think the font is really cute and dainty, actually. I quite like it. And this is just damage from some sticky tape that someone put on. They put a clear cover on top of this with sticky tape on top. So don't put sticky tape on books or paper, because then it damages them like this. It makes them quite unsightly. Here we go, the Singer Sewing Book, Mary Brooks Picken, 2nd edition, 1954, from McGraw-Hill Publishing Company Limited, and that's New York, London, Toronto. That's, I suppose, the places they operated. I actually don't know if this company is still running or not. I don't actually know. And it seems there were British editions, which I believe this is the British edition, because I'm sure the word colour had a U in it. All those very British spellings that I did notice when I had a quick flick through. And there's a couple of American editions, and yeah, and it seems they had some in a range of other languages, which would make sense because the Singer even today is a pretty large company. They would have the resources too. So just to preface here, I'm going to read a little bit. I'm not going to go through the whole book, just bits and pieces that I found interesting. But obviously this book is from 1954. A lot of the sensibilities may not be sensibilities that we would agree with nowadays. So I'm going to read things, but that doesn't mean I necessarily agree with what's being said. Just in case you didn't know, it'd be quite strange if I did. You know, I liked sewing and I like doing traditionally very feminine things, but that doesn't mean I'm this person who thinks that things were better in the past or anything like that. So yeah. So dedication. This book is dedicated to women and girls, and especially to teachers of sewing everywhere, who enjoy the feel of fabric, the beauty of textures, the precision of stitches, the smoothness of seams, and who delight always in appropriate fabrics, carefully cut and made up for a happy purpose. I just find that really cute and quite funny. I do indeed enjoy the feel of fabric. It does seem very silly. But when I think about it, I am just as silly. I do definitely just go and just feel fabric, especially when someone tells me, oh, this is a silk, or this is a cotton, or this is a linen, just a random garment in the shop. I'll just go and feel it. Like, oh, what's the weight of it? What's the quality of it? So I am indeed this person. Oh, it's got an introduction, we've got acknowledgement, so it's not too long. I might as well give it a read. If my voice is annoying or if I slip up, I'm very sorry. But hopefully you'll find this interesting. So, introduction. The purpose of this book is to put it into your hands in one complete package that means the means of attaining one of the happiest experiences of a woman's everyday life. So, I find it quite fun, but I have a feeling that every woman is going to enjoy sewing. It's very much, well, gender roles, expectations at the time. Sewing, when it is done with skill and confidence, can be exactly that, for it can mean the satisfaction of family needs and wishes through the work of your own hands. A person with a hobby is a person whose life is interesting. I suppose that's true. It's good to have things you enjoy doing outside of work. Psychologists say that the development of an absorbing hobby, particularly one involving the use of the hands, is the most important element in leading a well-balanced and well-integrated life. When the mind and the hands are occupied with the creation of something useful and attractive, there is no room for discontent, boredom, petty worries, fears, and jealousies. And there are few pleasures to equal the sense of accomplishment of holding in one's hands a skillfully finished product of one's own efforts. Perhaps the most rewarding of all hobbies for a woman is sewing. Not only is it an outlet for her creative impulse, a way to make use of her sense of design, her deft fingers, her enjoyment of colour and texture, but the things she makes can beautify her home and provide for herself and her family the kind of clothing most becoming to them, at a great saving over the cost of buying such items. Best of all, sewing is a hobby that any woman with little patience and little practice can pursue with expertness and enjoyment. I think you do need a bit of patience for sewing though. If you've ever tried to sew a garment, it takes twice as long as you think it will. Successful sewing does not come from wishful thinking, but from an actual practical work, sitting at your sewing machine with pieces of fabric and learning to put them together beautifully. This book is designed to show you how to do so with ease and interest, to be your companion in all your sewing endeavours, to stand at your side with suggestions, inspirations, and demonstrations that will make sewing a delight it should be. Good tools, good craftsmanship, and good ideas are all that any expert can bring to his work. It's quite interesting that they use his, because obviously sewing was seen as a very gendered female thing. Language, it's interesting. It is our hope that the information in these pages will provide you with the fundamentals of all three of these requirements for your sewing. Make this book work for you. It will bring you hours and hours of satisfaction and pounds in money saved. No, pounds isn't. Sorry, I know, I can't remember the exact dates, but we moved over from shillings and pence to the more metric, just pounds and pence. But I think we were still using shillings and pence, but I think pounds were included in that. I'm just getting a little bit confused. I just remember 1 shilling is 5 pence. At some point it was anyway. And it can, with your help and your sewing machine, make your family and your home the best dressed in your neighbourhood. It should perhaps be mentioned that, because of trade restrictions in some areas, particular accessories and services referred to in this book may not be universally available. That's actually something to think about. I don't remember the exact date rationing stopped in Britain, but it was well into the 50s, the early 50s. I think it might have stopped by 1954, but obviously, depending on what country you were in, rationing could have gone on for longer. So you may have been someone who got this book when rationing was still on, and that's something quite interesting to think about. I don't often think about that with the 50s. You just kind of think, oh, the war's over, everyone's wearing the new look, everyone's got really flowy skirts, everyone's buying things, capitalism. But trends, they're very gradual, and that is something I forget a lot of the time. But it's always a gradual change. Time for the acknowledgements. In our earnest desire to produce a practical, helpful sewing instruction book, we knew of no one so well equipped to prepare it as Mary Brooks Picken. Mrs. Picken, the foremost authority on home sewing, is the author of 92 books on sewing and crafts which have guided hundreds of thousands of women to successful accomplishment. For many years, she was the director of instruction for a famous correspondence school of sewing, and since then, through her books, her magazine articles, her radio and television talks, and in her work with schools and colleges throughout the USA, she has become the friend and teacher of countless thousands of women who sew. So I actually don't know who Mary Brooks Picken is. Maybe if you're American, you might know more about who she is. I'm assuming she was perhaps like a celebrity of her time almost. And through acknowledgement and being well known, she could publish all these works. But it might be quite interesting to see if I can find anything else out about her. But obviously she knew how to sew. As one of the founders and the leading spirits in the internationally known fashion group and a trustee of the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York, she is particularly able to bring to the craft of sewing a real fashion inspiration. In this book, the latest of many excellent texts she has prepared for us, she has worked in a full cooperation with the Singer Sewing Machine Company's educational department on methods and instructions so that they are completely coordinated with the practices taught in Singer Sewing Centres. I don't know what that is. I'm assuming at some point maybe they had almost like little schools you could go to and learn things. I don't know. Again, it's a big company. They could probably do a load of things. But also, especially in this day and age, like, just get a decent sewing machine from any brand. They're all like probably just made overseas in the same factory at this point anyway. It really doesn't have to be a Singer or anything. Just get one. Just start. Thanks are due to Claire F. Valentine for the format of this book and the clear and comprehensive presentation of illustrative material, to Patricia Linage Rowe of her fashion drawings, also to Ruth Clark, Eula Hicks, Jessie Hutton, and Anna Miller of the Singer educational staff for aid in the classroom teaching practices. For the photographs of beautiful interiors in this book, showing a variety of decorative uses of fabric furnishings. Oh, I've seen some of these very of the time. I think if you looked at them, It looks like your grandma's house. On the home, we are indebted to the following: Armstrong Cork Company, Better Homes and Gardens, Burlington Mills, Cavalier Corporation, Council of Industrial Design, Crawford Furniture Company, Every Woman's Magazine, Harrods Furniture Galleries, Living for Young Homemakers, McCall's Magazine, Today's Woman's Magazine, Tomlington of High Point NC, and Vertona Textiles Limited. I felt a lot like, I don't know if you've ever called a train and it's a long route and you have to call out all the train stops to tell you where the train, I felt a bit like that. Of course I love trains. So here is the contents page. I don't know if there's a second. There is, it's quite a lot. So, quite a lot. Yes, so I think the first bit is about using patterns and machine sewing, and a little bit on mending, and there's a little bit on home furnishings and furnishings in the home. So I'm just going to look a little bit at the sewing with patterns, and I think this would be quite useful for people who sew even with modern patterns, just to explain why I find them annoying and what you could do even with modern patterns if you're having fit issues. And I might look a little bit on the mending, and for fun I should see if I can find some of the images of the furnishings because it's very much of the time. And this is just a vague overview, but if you're interested in looking at anything or anything else to do with this book, I can always see if I could make another video on it. I just thought this was quite interesting because I assume this book's out of print, and I don't know how easy it is to acquire. This is the first of its kind I found, and I found this in the charity shop. So yeah. Let's go to another bit of text. If I went a bit too far there. And this is about how to use this book and about your sewing machine. And I did read a little bit about this earlier, and I think it was just, it had a quite poetic edge to it. And this is about sewing. There's a lot of text. And here's a little fun illustrative thing. I do love these illustrations. Wow, the illustrator loves illustrations. No me lo creo. I know. That's just ridiculous. I think it's quite funny. Well, not funny. I just think it's quite nice. Well, I say I read the whole thing. I regret saying that. How to use this book. You may have some sewing skill when this book comes into your hands. Even so, you may not be satisfied that you can make pockets or bound buttonholes with enjoyable pride that you miter in the corner. Cord a seam or gather a flounce as perfectly as you would like, whichever skill you may lack. What skill do I lack? I don't know. Whichever skill you may lack, take this book to your machine, get out some muslin, or prepare scraps of fabric, or percale? Percale? I don't think I've seen that word before. Scraps of fabric and practice. See how much you can improve your work by following the pictures and text carefully, say. A bound buttonhole, a fitted facing, a gathered edge. Concentrate for 10 minutes, for 20 minutes as you practice with this book to guide you. You will realise that there is no reason ever to apologise for your sewing or be disappointed with your results. I mean, it's tall orders from the book, what the book claims. Just in the matter of stitching straight, a few minutes of practicing correctly can help. Use a ruled tablet sheet, an unthreaded needle on the machine, stitch precisely on the ruled lines, pivoting and turning a true corner, spacing rows of stitching evenly. Practice with any attachment you have not mastered. See how easy it is to achieve the fashion details you want with these time-saving ingenious sewing aids. I don't even know what those are. I don't know what I just read. Decide what you wish to make, choose your pattern or make your plan, and find this book and easy to follow directions for doing the work. Read carefully the opening sections and the introduction material of each subject, such as colour, home furnishings, sewing for children, etc., before beginning any actual sewing. In these chapters you will find the general principles, standards for selection, do's and don'ts and the orientation to give you background and spare your disappointment. When you have these in mind, you are ready for the details of construction and sewing. The essentials of good craftsmanship and the know-how for carrying out your ideas are assembled in the text and in hundreds of diagrams for your guidance, so that you should be able to make the most of anything your imagination can conceive in the realm of fabric and thread. Even little pitfalls and precautions along the way were taken into consideration to save you time and annoyance. As for your own ideas, the book provides numerous tests by which you can gauge their rightness, becomingness, and suitability. For example, the colour fans are designed to help make you the right selection of colour for clothing. I'm not sure what those are. I don't know if those are in the book. They don't mean colour swatches, do they? Who knows? The colour chart on home furnishings gives you a wide range of choices in colour schemes. I don't know if we have the colour chart, but if I find it, I'll let you know. I don't think we have that, unless it's literally printed into the book. The designer and decorator stitches offer a variety of styles to stimulate your imagination, and the colour plates of interiors offer a variety of styles to stimulate show the inventiveness of good taste of professional decorators. Read the text, study the pictures, and as you sew, keep this book near you so that you can refer to it readily. Use the contents pages or the index to find quickly what you want, and let the book help you to happier, more successful sewing. And now I've got this cute little illustration, a little wistful view into the countryside there. You're on your little sewing machine. It looks like a little old style treadmill. It doesn't even look like the electric one. Anyway, your sewing machine. Whether it is rented, inherited, or bought, I can't even imagine renting a sewing machine. Perhaps that does still happen. But in this day and age, can you imagine, where would you rent a sewing machine? Sewing is just a skill that is not expected to be had by anyone anymore. Every woman should have a sewing machine conveniently near, whether she makes clothes or not. There are always rips and tears that need mending. People do not mend anymore. Modern people, mending is fun, or at least good, or at the very least saves money. The amount of money I've just made from darning socks, it's great. And sewing, also you don't need a sewing machine to darn socks, you can do it by hand. Anyway. And sewing machine mending is right for seams and for sturdy items that get hard wear. Oftentimes, restricting insecure or broken seams can prolong the life of a garment. The portable sewing machine is ideal for cramped quarters. Do they mean the modern ones that we have that just have a handle on top that you can carry around? And they must mean those ones that aren't restricted to the sewing table, surely. Because there are portable sewing machines you can buy, but they're very modern and they're not good. I would advise you don't buy them because they're not good. It can rest on the floor of a cupboard in its own little case and never be in the way, yet be handy for the occasional needs for a big job of drapery or slipcover making, or for making dresses, coats, suits, all types of clothes, table linens, whatever one wants. The cabinet machine of your choice is ideal as an extra table in the hall, dining room, bedroom, living or sewing room. The large portable as an accessory to a built-in sewing compartment for any use in any room in the house. If a person is in temporary premises, a machine can be rented from the Singer Sewing Machine Company to use for a week, a month or longer. I wonder if they still do that. I have a feeling they don't do that anymore. But I mean, if they do, prove me wrong. In this day and age, just, I suppose, get a second-hand machine or get a friend. I don't know. Or just be insane like me and just love sewing. The machine, like the stove and table, is something to use every day and should be ready and always accessible for 2 minutes or 2 hours of stitching. Never place a machine where it is hard to reach. Let it be part of your household equipment as much as your electric iron or mixer. Use it to mend clothing before it goes into the wash or when it comes from under the iron, for the brief stitching time while the washer washes or the cake bakes. That's very 50s language, isn't it? See page 164 for instructions for bundle sewing, which will help you make use of the short periods of time to advantage in planning, cutting, machine work, handwork, and the required pressing. That was a 50s sentence. Imagine sewing machines being an ubiquitous appliance in your household in this day and age. That just isn't a thing anymore. It's quite interesting to read this kind of ideal at the time. Waddle, shuffle the book. I don't. Occasionally a daughter or niece, because, you know, only women sew, will inherit a machine. And I did inherit a machine, actually. It wasn't in best condition. I did end up getting a new one, but it is a sentimental machine for me, so I do still have it. And I'm sure I could get it to work now because I have so much more knowledge, but I'm used to my new machine. It's just there to be sentimental. When it comes into her hands, such a machine should be checked carefully at the Go and get your machine checked. If she does not have the small instruction book right for her type of machine, she should get one at the singer shop and study it page by page, so she's completely familiar with all working parts of the machine. A sewing machine, like a motor car, should be oiled and the motor lubricated regularly, and should be kept in the best possible running order so that you should always invite one to use it. To buy a machine and have it as your very own. To select your space and your needs, the machine that is right for you is, of course, the most satisfactory way of all. When you have a machine, whether you buy it, inherit it, or rent it, do take time to know how to thread the machine properly, to oil it, to protect it when not in use, to stitch straight, to use the essential attachments, all to save your time. Good tools are a pleasure to use. A pair of sharp scissors that cuts, a vacuum cleaner that really cleans, an iron that glides with ease over your fabrics. Such tools, the speed of work, help it to be interesting, improve results. A sewing machine in the hands of one who has taken the time to learn it efficiently makes sewing pleasurable, profitable, and rewarding. As it must always be, the sewing is to be successful. I love how frivolous these sentences are. There is very obviously like gender roles, 50s sensibilities within it, but I just love how pretentious and like frivolous like sound, at least like a modern kind of sensibility. I guess you have to really dress up the idea of get machine and do the sew. Your sewing skills are like money in the bank. Many women want to help to earn. Experts tell us the first way to earn is to save. 10 shillings. So as I was saying earlier, so we were still using the pence and shillings, and I don't remember the other pounds. I don't remember the system much very well, but I remember shillings, and as I said, is it 1 shilling is 5 pence? But I think it would have been different. I think 1 shilling is 5 pence was the going rate a few decades later. 10 shillings spent on fabric can, with intelligent planning and skillful workmanship, produce 30 shillings worth of finished product. Aside from the savings made, a woman who sews, well, always has a trade she can use in an emergency. She can always pay her own way with sewing skills. Isn't such economy, such insurance, well worth any effort you expend in learning to sew beautifully? The more you learn about sewing and apply what you learn, the more skillful you become. This is actually something interesting. So, obviously, for a long time, sewing has been seen as a very female-dominated trade. If you go back hundreds of years, even before the invention of a sewing machine, there were women and men did make clothes, but more typically, women would be making dresses or garments seen as women's garments. And it was a way for women to make money, and in some cases, they could go up social classes. And essentially, with the sewing machine and fast fashion, it just went away. You know, why would you pay someone to make a gown for a few hours, and you know them, and they hand sew it, and the pay wasn't necessarily amazing across the board even in that time, but at least if you fell on hard times and you could sew, that's a job you could do. Whereas like that's not a thing anymore. Everyone just goes, we just buy a cheap top or whatever from the fast fashion shop, and that's made by someone abroad in who knows what conditions. So there's loads of reasons to not like fast fashion, but one thing which I do lament with the inception of the sewing machine is that there's just this whole trade gone where women could just pick up a needle and make a living, especially in a time when there weren't many jobs that women could do and they were so dependent on men. So it's very much something I suppose it's just in the past now. I don't see how you could get back to this, but it would just be nice if it was a thing still where anyone could pick up a needle and at least make some money if they really needed to. So I was saying how because sewing proficiency is not where it was in the 1950s, and for reference this book is from 1954, I don't think that's a thing anymore. So I have had people who have asked me to alter things, and I have indeed been compensated for that, but I don't get enough people needing my services that I could make a living. And I think a lot of that just comes from the way we treat clothes in one day and fast fashion. Why would you want to pay me a living wage to alter something when it turns out to be the price of a new garment, and you can just buy another garment and the cycle continues essentially? And I was saying how back in the day, a lot of people, especially women, would turn to sewing as a way to make income, and in some cases go up a social class, especially at a time where you didn't have much jobs that you could do and you were pretty much just relying on marrying well to have things set up for you in life, if you weren't lucky enough to be born with like a pretty good inheritance. And it does talk, I think it talks a bit about it here, so I'm just going to read this passage. As you sew and know the thrill of using a beautiful machine with its perfect stitches to make seams and gathers and bindings on material of your own choosing, you may wonder about its history and who made such stitching possible. History tells us that as early as the 17th century, men tried to devise a machine that would sew. Early in the 18th century, a French tailor named Barthélemy Timonier, I think it's Timonier. Abby did talk about this guy in the video. He made a thing, and I don't think he actually patented it. Just go watch the video. Invented a crude wooden sewing machine. I love how they have to undermine it, because well, we'll get to it. Essentially, Singer didn't actually invent the sewing machine. He managed to make it profitable and get it in houses and make the money. So you'll see in a lot of language they want to undermine the other people who came first because they don't want to admit that they didn't come first. They like to pretend they did. Anyway, a French tailor called Barthélemy Timonier invented a crude wooden sewing machine, but it was destroyed by a mob of angry tailors who saw it as a threat to their livelihood, which I completely understand. Yeah, a lot of jobs, even in the past like 100 years, have been taken over by machines. I know people personally who have lost jobs because a machine does it faster within like living history. And of course with things like AI and stuff, it's like, well, are our jobs at risk? We don't know. So I completely understand why they would do that. Others tried and failed. Then in 1846, Elias Howe Jr. from Cambridge mass-made and patented what is popularly regarded as the first sewing machine. I love that language, popularly regarded as the first sewing machine. But it wasn't truly practical. So this is where they get you. Apparently, they say Singer made the first practical sewing machine, which is their way of trying to evoke the idea that he made the first one, because it was him who made it affordable and got it in homes. But most of the work was already done by the time it got to him. It could sew only 6 or 7 inches at one time. Not until 4 years later did another American, Isaac Merritt Singer, develop the first really practical machine, one that would sew continuously or until the thread ran out, with a stitch that was the same on both the right and wrong side of the material. Today, the company which he founded is worldwide and manufactures over 2,000 varieties of sewing machines. Those do every kind of work from binding books to seaming hose. 2 seaming hose in this day and age. Can you imagine like someone actually repairing their tights in this day and age? If you do, that's great. Honestly, that's good. Keep doing that. They make men's shirts and upholstery for motor cars. Cannot imagine someone, an average everyday person, just like making upholstery for cars. If you do though, keep it up. They make the curtains for your windows and the carpets on your floor, hats and shoes, parachutes. I mean, this was 1954, but I mean the war was over by then. But people, I'm not sure when rationing stopped in Britain, but this would have been the tail end of rationing. It would have just ended. If there was no sewing machine, it would take 100 times the effort and many times the cost to produce even a limited amount of apparel such as we enjoy today. And that's how we got consumerism and overconsumption and fast fashion and exploitation. It's nice we have more choice, and trust me, if I'm sewing a gown, sometimes I just want it done fast and I am going to use my sewing machine. But it's not without its disadvantages. I'll read this passage and then I'm going to show you a passage on how they dealt with patterns and finding the right pattern for your size. Prepare yourself mentally for sewing. Think about what you're going to do. Choose a fabric and pattern right for the purpose. Practice sewing on scraps of material until your stitch is just right and you have the confidence in your ability to stitch straight. This is something you should do, but you know, do we always do the things we should do? Approach the job with enthusiasm. You want to make something lovely, to have fun and putting pieces of fabric together, to make a garment, to handle the fabric with appreciation, to watch the beauty of the article grow as a result of your planning and effort. Never approach sewing with a sigh or lackadaisically. Good results are difficult when indifference predominates. Never try to sew with a sink full of dishes or beds unmade when there are urgent housekeeping chores to do these first, so your mind is free to enjoy your sewing. Again, a pretty 50s sentence, assuming you're the housewife doing housewife things, but it is also good to be in a good headspace for sewing, because it does really help. When you sew, make yourself as attractive as possible. Go through a beauty ritual of orderliness. Have on a clean dress, be sure your hands are clean, fingernails smooth, a nail file and pumice will help. Always avoid hangnails. Keep a little bag of French chalk near your sewing machine where you can pick it up and dust your fingers at intervals. This not only absorbs the moisture on your fingers, but helps keep your work clean. I literally don't know anyone who's ever done this. Have your hair in order, powder and lipstick, put on with care. Looking attractive is a very important part of your sewing. Because if you are making something for yourself, you will try it on at intervals in front of the mirror, and you can hope for a better result when you look your best. Again, sewing must be approached with the idea that you are going to enjoy it. And if you were constantly fearing, if you are constantly fearful that a visitor will drop in or your husband will come home, you will not look neatly. Oh my god! Husband will come home and you will not look neatly put together. You will not enjoy your sewing as you should. Therefore, spruce up at the beginning so that you are free to enjoy every part of sewing you do. So let's just put the 1950s sensibilities aside. Yeah, this is a yes and no. Honestly, a lot of the time when I sew, I do look like a cave troll, even when I'm trying things on. But I do have to admit, if I don't look like a cave troll, I look decent. It does help lift your spirits a bit. It does add to things. But also, sometimes cave troll, and that is also valid. Materially. Assemble all the essentials you are going to need before you begin. Have close at hand the ironing board and iron, a small bowl of water, preferably with a clean sponge in it, a cheesecloth and heavy muslin, press cloth, scissors, pins, chalk, small ruler, tape measure, everything you need to sew with, so that you will not have to jump up and to get this or that, because such distractions affect your efficiency. This is true. This is true for many points in life. So when I'm working and doing my illustrations, I have a box of all my I have a box of all my art supplies, but I put my most commonly used materials on top, and that is because if I misplace things, I spend about half an hour looking for it, and I don't want to draw anymore. So as annoying as that one is for someone like me, that is actually a good tip to have. I would say put your sewing things in a place that you normally do, and put your most commonly used things in a place that's easy to reach, so you don't spend forever looking for them. If you are to get good results from sewing, remember that you must do it pridefully and skillfully. An uncoordinated sewing experience is not conducive either to enjoyment or best results. Plan for sewing time. Make an appointment with yourself to sew, just as you would with your hairdresser or with a neighbour to go shopping. If your intimates enjoy sewing, invite them to come and sew with you from 2 to 5 on a Wednesday, or perhaps for an evening each week. Do not spend your time planning refreshments, but insist that each bring sewing to do. On days when you are sewing, make the dessert in the morning, plan a quick-to-get dinner so that your afternoon can be given to the full enjoyment of sewing. Just housewife things. Plan ahead of time that you are to make. Keep a notebook and jot down in it what findings or trimmings you need for each thing. Work out a recipe for each garment. For example, 3.5 yards of crepe. Oh yeah, we weren't using metric yet. Well, you win, Americans. But I am going to hold on to my metric system when it comes to sewing. In case you didn't know, I don't exactly know when the metric system was brought in, but we're essentially this weird halfway between metric and imperial in the UK. So we still drive in miles per hour, for example, but we cook in grams and kilograms, and we measure weight in stone. But we also do use kilograms. It's a bit of both, but we also do use stone. So that's fun. I think Canada's quite similar. I think they also have a strange mishmash. I'm not quite sure. 1 spool of matching thread, seam binding, 1 matching zip, pattern 000. Pin a scrap of the fabric to a page in your notebook. When you buy a piece of material, take a snip of that fabric to use in matching the colour of the threads, bindings and zip fastener. That isn't a terrible idea actually. If you are physically shopping, you could just take a swatch of the fabric if you already have a fabric you like. In this day and age, a lot of us shop online, and that is a bit more difficult as pictures vary, filters, screens, it does vary a bit, so that is more difficult in that sense. But if you are shopping physically, that isn't a bad idea. If you already have a fabric you want to use, take a swatch with you, and you can match all the thread and whatever. Determine the construction your pattern calls for plain seams, darts, hem, gathering, zip. Look for each in the index of this book and mark each reference page. Study each detail and make a practice sample if necessary. If you must use the dining table or must clear the floor for a cutting surface, I can relate to that, plan to cut several garments at one time. That's interesting. It was probably, well, I know it wasn't, it was definitely, we were making garments more often than we do now. But I don't cut several garments at a time because I get confused and I get messy, and I like to focus on doing one at a time. I don't even know what the segunda, no, it's not English. Siguiente is not English. The next garment, I don't always even know what the next garment will be. Roll all the pieces of each garment together or place them in a box where you can get them readily. Do your preliminary stitching on a garment at one time, pressing as you go. You should press your garments as you go. I did that when I was studying. I don't do that now because I don't have a nice, special, good iron for ironing. I have a really bad quality domestic one. And I don't want to waste electricity by keeping it on all the time. But you should iron your garments as you go. Save the basting or handwork to do when a friend drops in and you want to talk, or when you want to listen to your favourite radio or TV programme. That is something we still do. A lot of the time when we have more monotonous sewing, we just put a show on. We normally use our favourite streaming service of choice nowadays, but that is something we still do. Much happiness and benefit can be had from sewing if you plan what you will do, if you buy carefully, if you choose your patterns for smartness and appropriateness, if you cut and sew in a planned, well-organised fashion. So the advice wasn't that bad. I think a lot of it still applies today, obviously with a more modern filter over it, I suppose. But I don't think that is bad advice. So I'm going to now turn over to a pattern bit. I don't know where it is. Oh, it says just to be nice illustration. Big surprise, the illustrator loves illustrations. So I just, by clicking at the pretty pictures, ooh, let's just waddle on over. Oh, this is cool. So this is colour theory for clothing. But of course, this is the 50s, so they only care about white women. So if you're a person of colour like me, kind of useless. I'm an artist. I know colour theory, blah blah blah. And also, to be honest, if you really like a colour, just wear the colour. These aren't dead fast rules. Fashion is supposed to be fun. So this is how you would measure yourself to make your own pattern, and the person before me has left this blank because they are lovely and don't want to make a mess. So this is how you measure yourself to make a pattern. I would have done a similar thing. I used a different book to learn my pattern cutting from when I was studying, but that is pretty much what I would have done. So this is what I find interesting. So I didn't realise until recently a lot of modern patterns have ease in so you can adjust, which is good, but they never say that on the package. I always wondered why my garments were way too big and misshapen, and now I know why. But anyway, I thought this was quite interesting to show you. This, I don't know if this will also apply with modern patterns because sizing has changed over the time, but especially if you're sewing with vintage patterns, especially from the 50s, this could be really useful information to know, so I'm just going to read it out. Some women think they can use one make? Some women think they can use one make of pattern better than another because it's cut more nearly conform to their body measurements, which I think is true. Measurements are all over the place nowadays, but I definitely would think that. If you know your size and where you vary from the average, you can readily adjust and make the pattern to fit, so there will be minimum of change when your garment arrives at the fitting stage. And that is that. Like there's no commonly known skill of adjust the pattern in this way so it will fit. It is said that practically every pattern sold requires some change in It is said that practically every pattern sold requires some change in measurements to conform to those of the individual. Also, that is not something we're told, especially in modern orthodox fashion. People just expect, oh, I'm this size, I will choose this size garment, it will fit, and it won't, because everybody is different. Even two people of the same size will look different, the proportions will be different, there's nothing wrong with you. We've just somehow chosen one model and expected the clothes made for that one model will somehow suit everyone, when it definitely won't. Often these changes are few and slight, but make them you must if your garment is to have a well-finished appearance. Save your time by knowing what changes you require and making them in your pattern before you start to cut. Most patterns are made for a figure 5'6" tall. I did not know this. For the reference, I am quite short. So this is something I think about a lot of the time. Before I cut, I will consider things like the proportions in the waist or the skirt lengths to try and adjust it. But again, no one told me there was ease in modern garments, so it still looked like a mess and I was still very confused. With a hip 2 to 3 inches larger than bust, check your charted measurements against the individual pattern pieces to make changes necessary so the pattern will conform to your measurements. To help you visualize just a few of the types of figures and choose one most nearly like yours, we show the drawings below. So I don't know if you can see, but I'm a visual person, so I found this very useful to know. I'm not an average person, I'm short, so I do look a bit more like this short figure. I have a bit of a short-waistedness going on, so that's visually, it's just really nice to see these, and perhaps you could look at them and maybe you can look at your own proportions and it might help. All size 14, so this is 50s style 14. Standardized clothing measurements have changed, they're all over the place as well, so this is probably more like a modern UK 8. It doesn't really matter. The point here is proportion, it doesn't matter what size you are. The figures shown at the left would all be typed at the same size, in this instance size 14, but they are decidedly different. The broad shoulder figure would do best with a size 16 pattern with the skirt made narrower. The narrow shoulder figure with the large hip might be best with a size 12, enlarging the skirt as illustrated on page 30. The tall figure problem is in the length, so length should be added both above and below the waistline. Just all of this. You sew modern patterns, no one even talks about this. There's this assumption that you're just going to fit perfectly if you choose your size, and that isn't the case. And if you are sewing, knowing this could really help, especially if you're a beginner and you don't know. And this says all size 40. I think this means European. I mean 40 because I guess the figures do look slightly different, and that it doesn't really matter. All figures shown are in the size 40 group. Bust and hip lines give major problems here. Average figure has no difficulty. Short figure needs to shorten below the waistline, which is often me. Tall needs to lengthen above and below. High large bust may need to add half to 1 inch, and as illustrated on page 29, low bust, large waist should add fullness, as illustrated on page 30, using a dart run from the side to give needed fullness for a low bust. Broad shoulders, narrow hip should alter skirt, see page 30. That is one thing to think as well. So specifically with bust measurements, position of the bust can change depending on what foundations you're wearing. If you're wearing a bra and it's making it all pointy and lift and separate, which is very popular in this era, or you're wearing a corset and it's more compression, different silhouettes, different foundations, that will change the measurement of the garment and what your garment should look like. So I have standard bodice blocks I've made, but sometimes I need to actually remeasure things depending on what foundations I'm wearing, because that will affect the pattern. And one thing I don't know about modern patterns is if they have the final measurements of the garment on it or the standard measurements for what they're going for. I suppose they might do, everyone's different. I used a few bad modern patterns and now I'm just really put off from using them. So if we have a quick look, we actually have a list of all the pattern adjustments for different body types, and this is something I think would be very valuable for just modern sewers. Even if you like to sew with a pattern or something, I think it should be good to know, because how else are you going to know to make something that fits you? So there's simple things like lengthening and shortening skirts. Those are quite easy to do. But there's things which I've appreciated is large arm muscle. So another thing about me is I have really just big, strong arms. It's just a genetic thing. Even if I don't do anything, and I'm not particularly active, I'm always just proportionally going to have really just strong, big arms. And because I'm also a dancer, they're, if anything, even more pronounced. So I'm usually having to alter patterns here. I'm usually having to let out sleeves or something. So this is something that would be very useful for me to know at the start of sewing. And I'm sure there's different things that would be useful for other people. So there's even things if you have thinner arms, how to do the opposite. Things like a large elbow. I don't think, who is thinking about that in modern pattern coding in fashion? I feel this is something we've kind of lost over time, even with sewing. And it leads people to think there's something wrong with them, and there really isn't. Like, you were catered for in the past. They did think about this. It's just for whatever reason, I don't know, it's probably capitalism, it normally is. This is something that has been lost. I don't know how much they do. They also narrow shoulders, and they do different kinds of hips and different kinds of backs. There are, I know there's a sway back and a more straight back, and there's all different kinds of things. Bodies are weird, and bodies are weird, yeah. And here is some photographs. So they have some photographs of upholstery, and I suppose it's just funny to me because this would have been the ideal inside interiors at the time. And obviously because of just how long ago this just looks like someone's grandmother's room. But the amount of stuff and the amount of just kind of maximalism. I don't know if anyone remembers having display plates. You might remember your grandmother just having plates on display and all this space because housing wasn't like £1 million for a flat, so everyone could have more space. But this idea of just displaying so many things is just not something we do now. And here's another thing. It's just very full on. And I think these busy printed sofas, I don't think that they're not trendy anymore. I haven't really seen them about. I feel that's very of the time. It gives me very chintz-y feel. Chintz is a like Indian textile technique and became very popular in the West, especially Britain. There's no surprise there. Really, Britain liking Indian textiles, wow, I'm so surprised. But it almost reminds you of that in the way it's very busy, and that is just falling out of fashion completely. I don't even know what's going on. A new colour and a wood tone. Everything is just, that is a grandmother's house. Just very busy, and colour combinations we wouldn't use today. And just all these fabrics everywhere. And then, I mean, this one's yellow, so I'm inclined to like it a little bit more, I'll be honest with you. But very grandmother's house. It's very interesting looking at ideals of even just at this time and thinking and realising how different things are. And here is an important part, which is mending. This is something I think would be so useful for just everyone to know, because everyone has clothing and it will wear out in some form, and it's so easy for people to be like, oh well, clothing's so cheap, I'll just buy a new one. But I think it's very useful just to sit down and learn some basic darning. Well, mending in general. Darning's the first one. So they talk about a machine darning, and obviously they're going to advertise their sewing machine, use their machine. But honestly, especially if you're a beginner, you can darn by hand. I darn socks by hand personally, or anything. I just find it easier. But it's got this illustration here to show you how to do it. The best way I describe it is you're just making a plain weave in the fabric. You're just threading the fabric in and out as if to replace the plain weave that's gone. It has loads of ideas of how to do different darning. It's got specifically how to fix runs in stockings when stockings were things that are commonly worn, but I assume it could still be used on things like tights. Tights are more commonly worn now. But again, when tights wear out, we're just told put nail polish on it to stop it getting worse. But that's it. You can't do anything else. Blah, blah, blah. Whereas here in the 50s, they were saying this is what you can do to help it out a bit more and further get more out of your fabric, because fabric was more expensive, blah, blah, blah. And I just think it's good to have these skills, or at least know someone that has them, that either will do it for free or you can afford to pay them. And then this is just different stitches you can do. I think this is specifically for sewing patches for worn out holes and things in garments. And this is darning on a scalloped edge. Just loads of things I suppose people would have been expected to do at the time, and some very of the time furniture. And then there's just different finishes. And something about children's clothes, because I mean it was the 50s, you were expected to have children and marry some man, 2 points for children, blah blah blah. One thing, this is about when you tack stitches on and marking or hand sewing things. But one thing I find interesting is they thought about left-handed people. If you tried knitting, I know I'm not left-handed personally, but I know someone who was, and it was difficult for them to knit, because they were learning off of a right-handed person, so they had to reverse everything. Here it's just saying, if you go with your left hand rather than your right and find hand sewn instructions confusing, hold the illustration to a mirror, and in the mirror you will see exactly how you should hold your needle or make your stitches. A little practice will save time and enable you to read a detailed picture easily, work from what the mirror shows rather than from the text. So if you're a left-handed sewer, perhaps a mirror may help you. I suppose in the age of photographs and video, you can mirror images, maybe even that will help. Even I'm wondering if you could get a sewing tutorial video up and just mirror it, and if that would work. But I'm not entirely sure. I haven't used this personally, but that's something I don't think about, that they have. So we've got introductions, and we've got a little bit about machines and fabrics. That might be good to go over actually, and how to just pattern, which I quickly went over, and there's different techniques like pockets and buttonholes and hems and just really bits and pieces, and there's more upholstery type things and things like that, and some stitches hand sewing stitches might be good to show you guys. And it's a bit on designer sketches, and I think that's more the construction drawing. That's not the right word. Technical drawings, I assume. And that's it. That's it, isn't it? And then we're back here. So if there's anything anyone particularly wants to see, I can show you. And This was just a nice little chaotic tour of a book from 1954 and a bit of an insight into what perhaps the middle class housewife would have been expected to do sewing wise. So that's it, and we'll put a pin in it, close the book on that for now. Thank you for watching, and I will see you later. Well, I will be most likely sewing something or drawing something. Yes, goodbye for now.